the cloud. All right, Mikhail, so now we're recording to the cloud, so you can, let's see, how am I going to do that? We see the audience. Here, let me pick this up for a minute. I'll show you the audience. So we've got about, how many people we got here? Maybe 20, 30 some maybe. So this is recording, so we know who you are. Yeah, thanks, Mikhail. Let me put it back on the flag. And hopefully you'll get to, so you'll be able to hang out for like a couple presentations maybe.
Yeah, I'll be back after it's over too, hopefully.
All right, man, thanks. Okay, so let's see, what time is it? I talked too much. It's 9:41. Tracy, I know you're on here for 9:40. Let me see if FHWA wants to talk before you. Bernadette, does John have any updates? Is he on there?
I have, yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Can you see me?
You changed here, speaker, there we go. Yeah, I can see you and hear you.
Okay,
Yeah, go
great.
ahead.
Just a few little things. Personnel wise, it's been quite a while ago, I guess last July, but we hired Nora Akkad. And so hopefully Nora's online or in person. I guess she was planning to come to be online today and then be in person perhaps this afternoon. But she's our contact for the electronic vehicles proposal. So putting together that plan. And so that's a nice chunk of change. It's an early implementation and early deadline. So hats off to KYTC for really jumping on that. We have a new environmental protection specialist. Eric Rothermel left us for promotion to Virginia. And now we have more DOP coming in next week. So today he's getting his stuff put on a truck and he's going to be driving here later this week. And look forward to seeing more DOP. We met with Danny Peak and some others. And so Moore's a really energetic, gregarious man and pretty well schooled in environmental stuff. So he's already working on some projects and proven some really good detailed analysis. I did want to share my screen if I can for just a second.
Yeah, go ahead.
And highlight. Can you see the bipartisan infrastructure law up there?
Let's see. Maybe I need to stop doing something here. Ooh.
Yeah, I can't see it, John.
You can?
I can't.
Let
Okay.
me see. Okay, let me try that. Now see if you can do it.
There you go.
Sweet.
Okay. So this is a website that's been up since basically the new year or November. And it's got some old information on the bipartisan infrastructure law that's, actually apportionments are rolling out now. So I want to just touch base on some of the topics in here, just kind of show it to you in case you haven't seen it. There is an overview page. I don't know if this is scrolling quickly, but it has a nice PowerPoint that gives all the different programs in a quick, I think there's 70 slides in that PowerPoint package. I think we've given parts of those to, I guess, Covington, or I'm sorry, Cincinnati and KIPTA. And so anyway, a lot of those slides come from that. And so all the slides are in there. Encourage you to go take a look at that. It gives the latest funding. And so you have apportionment tables down here. And those are rolling out, month by month. Local support, there's quite a bit on here on the TAP program and updates to the TAP, LTAP, TTAP, Highway Institute for training. I'm sorry. And then let me roll on over here to the fact sheets. And these also are coming out about once a month or more. They're starting to roll out. So again, you have apportionment, CMAC, HSIP, the Metropolitan Planning Program, Electric Vehicle and EVI program. And so all those have fact sheets in there. And so encourage it, there's transportation alternatives and how those are subdivided out. So And then the guidance is also coming out a little slower. The fact sheets pretty much come from the law and quick interpretation. The guidance takes a little bit longer because it actually is telling us how to do it. And so that's, I guess, that. Along with the Bill Act, we've got the notice of funding opportunity out on the table now for the mega infrastructure and rural discretionary grant programs. And so I know a lot of you are looking at those and looking at the new measures that are in there. And I encourage you to look at those measures very carefully and really brush up on the complete streets policy. A couple weeks ago, we issued a complete streets report to Congress. That'll give you a lot of guidance as well as the other things you're getting. So that's really all I had. Thank you. Any questions?
Yeah, thanks, John. Does anybody got any questions for Mr. Ballantyne for
Oh,
FHWA?
Bernadette reminded me the FTA apportionments also recently came out, and we're expecting some guidance on resiliency. That'll be a little more than the resiliency of climate change resiliency, but it also really gets down into the infrastructure side of bridge resiliency and landslide resiliency, et cetera. So yeah, that's it. Thank you.
All right, thanks, sir. And I don't see any questions from the audience. We got a microphone set up here in the middle of the room, but they'll see it in chat box. Let me check the chat box here. Hey, let's see, we got one. John posted the website link in the chat box for the virtual guys. Eric Pelfrey's asking everyone, what's the new FHWA environmental SME name?
I'll put that in the chat box. It's more MOUR DIOP DIOP.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. That's all I see. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
All right.
I'll try to stop sharing screen if I can figure out how to do that.
Yeah, you got it. Okay, let me go ahead and read. Next speaker is on KYTC asset management and resiliency. We have a working group for this thing, and Bernadette kind of recommended. I think you guys have like a 10 working groups or something. Resiliency is one of them. Is that right? Yeah. 8. Okay. So yeah, she was kind of saying, well, it'd be cool to have Tracy talk on this if she's available. And then Tracy said, oh yeah, I can do this. So let me read Tracy's bio. Tracy's assistant state highway engineer overseeing maintenance, materials, performance, and asset management. I met her when she was the director of maintenance, and she's been the branch manager of pavement management. She started her career as a bridge designer for the Minnesota DOT. So please welcome Tracy Novachnik. Hey, Tracy, thank you. Yeah, okay, so this, it's just like a Zoom call up here. So just say, got it, I guess. Mouse. And then, is it already loaded for you? Cool. Is that you? Yeah. Nice. Okay, and then share your screen like a Zoom meeting. So let's see, escape out of that probably. Then we just gotta click on this little Zoom deal. It's up here maybe. There we go. About. Share screen. Might have to stop sharing mine down there. Share. That should be good. You can get this. You want the laser pointer? I'll give it to you in case you want it. Okay. And then however you do the main slide there. I'll sneak it up here just in case you want it. Okay, let's see. Let's get that Mikhail Pelfrey thing out of the way. Oh, you're sharing it with me too. Okay, go ahead.
You good?
Yep.
All right. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
So now I know how I got here. Like Jacob said, my name is Tracy Novachnik. I'm Assistant State Highway Engineer. I oversee maintenance, materials, asset management, and performance management. I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about the TAMP and then how resiliency interweaves with it. I think that most of this audience knows what a transportation asset management plan is, but I'll just go over a few things. It's just a real light presentation, but so transportation asset management, our plan, it aligns our performance goals with our planned investments. It's a document for the agency that shows what our assets are, and what our long-term needs are, and what our strategies are to take care of our assets. So our document for KYTC talks about pavements and bridges largely. So we talk about what condition they're in, what our spending strategies are going to be, where our priorities are as an agency, and how we're going to lower our life cycle costs. And the document as a whole helps us achieve our desired conditions. So we've had a TAMP since 2018. 2018, they were required by Federal Highway. Our initial TAMP, which is available online, you can see on the right side. When we set out to build our transportation asset management plan, our goal was, yes, to meet the requirements put forth by Federal Highway. So we did, of course, have a lot of boxes to check, and we wanted to meet those requirements. But we also wanted to have a sustainable method to communicate our goals as an agency. And that helped build us support for our funding needs. It helped us estimate what our current needs are and project out our future funding needs. And it allows us to let other agencies, members within the cabinet, Federal Highways, the legislative community see what those needs are. And we found overall that having our transportation asset management plan helped us build acceptance for asset management. It really helped us show the benefits of a preservation program for our major assets. And it was useful overall for knowledge transfer about what we were doing as an agency. So why is that going away? So our goals for our TAMP for our next TAMP, because we are in the development phase right now for our next TAMP. It's due in this year, and we are working with a consultant. Our draft TAMP has already come to us. I've submitted comments, and I'm expecting that document back this week or next week. We are looking to tell our story more effectively. Our initial TAMP, because we really didn't know what we were getting into, I was a little skeptical of it as a document. I support transportation asset management, of course, as someone who comes from the pavements and bridges world and the strategies put out there. But sometimes these documents can work for us or against us. And what we found is the document was working for us. So with the next TAMP, I'd like to tell our story more effectively, more plainly, so that it's more consumable. And also show how we are managing our assets as effectively as possible. So how we are aligning our investments with our priorities, how we are extending the service life for the items we own as an agency, how we're preserving the value of that asset, because when you're speaking to leaders legislatively or within the cabinet, the value of those assets is important. It is one of the Commonwealth's greatest investments, and it is beneficial to portray it that way, and to look at our annualized costs. So like I said, the scope of our document remains largely with pavements and bridges. KYTC has an enormous network. Our state-owned network is large because we have a reduced county system, we have a reduced city system. So we have something like, I think, the 8th largest pavement network in the US and the 7th largest or 9th largest, I can't remember offhand, bridge network. So we looked at all of our pavements with the exception of the rural secondary within our TAMP. And that is because the rural secondary is funded separately out of a separate office, and they have separate management strategies. And then we have all of our state-owned structures within the TAMP. So what did we learn from the first TAMP? We learned that we do have a good foundation of asset management language within pavements and bridges. We have a strong relationship between maintenance and planning, but that we have a lot of work to do as an agency. We have a lot of forecasting requirements needed. There's a lot of work that goes into a 10-year forecast of conditions and needs for your assets. And that requires a lot of software needs, a lot of personnel, a lot of data, and you have to have good, strong data behind that. So we do have forecasting enhancement needs And of course, organizational support. You see that this is the difficulty in a lot of agencies, is that asset management philosophies reside solely within the central office and within leadership, and it's difficult to get that out to the districts. So for the next TAMP, we're going to expand on our state of good repair objectives and policies. So what do we consider state of good repair for our transportation network? We're going to have more public facing process descriptions so that they're more easily consumable. We need better defined roles and responsibilities within the cabinet. And we need to better define how risk defines our investment strategies and have a stronger link between our TAMP and other strategic documents so that we understand how that interweaves into the culture and the priorities of the cabinet. So how does resiliency go with the transportation asset management plan? Well, climate and extreme weather are a significant risk to our transportation network, and risk is part of the transportation asset management plan. We expect that those risks will intensify. I come from a maintenance background. I was director of maintenance for several years, and what you see is that year after year, you are devoting more and more of your time responding to weather events and climate events. And that consumes a larger portion of our operating budget every year. Our infrastructure is designed to handle impacts based on historic climate, but not the changes that we are experiencing. So preparing for the changes and understanding what we expect to see is important for our transportation system. So in Kentucky, our natural hazards that we focus on are flash floods, slides. Slides are probably the greatest threat to our roadway network, and sinkholes. Our karst geography is difficult for us to maintain. And then of course we have, obviously everybody has tornadoes on their mind after last year and the impacts we saw there. We do have a seismic area. We've been fortunate that we've not seen a lot of action on that. So we do have some efforts that have been completed, some research that was done with KTC and the Division of Environmental Analysis. They worked to look at our national highway system and generate a list of common vulnerabilities and areas of common impact within the state. So looking at each of KYTC's districts and defining what the common hazards there, whether karst is the most prevalent in Western Kentucky or slides in Eastern Kentucky, and where those repeated events are happening. We also had a study to look at extreme weather and asset management and look at our bridges to see which bridges were more susceptible to flooding and develop an index of sensitivity for those bridges. So that's something we can use if a bridge is flagged for a replacement. We can look at that index to see if, when we consider replacing it, whether it should be replaced in kind or whether we should apply an enhanced design consideration to that structure to see if we need to take into account future climate changes to replace that structure. We also did a pavement sensitivity analysis to look at climate impacts and understand whether or not we need to consider as an agency changing some of our binder grades so that they can handle the climate changes that are anticipated. That was a limited study to southwestern Kentucky, but we're looking to expand that. So our future activities that we're looking at, first of all, we're looking to put together a transportation resiliency improvement plan. So we want to look at our resiliency efforts as a cabinet and prioritize what we've done and where we need to go. And we need to look at the impacts to our assets. So what do we anticipate climate-wise? And which assets will that impact the most? And then what are the anticipated costs? So where is our greatest risk? Is our greatest risk in flooding? Is our greatest risk in temperature change? And then help help interweave those efforts into our prioritization process. So having that plan in place will help us go for a higher federal share under the PROTECT formula as part of the infrastructure bill that was discussed. Again, we're also looking at incorporating some of those metrics into both shift and asset management project prioritization. And then continuing our work with the Kentucky Resiliency Working Group, which Bernadette has been leading. So that's a group of people with the state and local governments and other agencies and the university as well, trying to pull together resiliency efforts across the state and the nation really to see what's being done and understand that work and take into account any of those factors where that work could also be right for Kentucky to include into our improvement plan. That's all I have.
Yeah, thank you, Tracy. And help yourself to some free mints or water there if you want them. I've got Tracy's been, how long have you been the assistant state highway engineer up there? A year now, or at least about a year. But she's been doing a great job up there. We're doing this long range plan. And, you know, we tap her brain every now and then with the maintenance side too. It's a huge asset to have you up there with the asset management pieces of all that. Come from construction, we kind of know how fast things, we've got the best plan in the world. You know how fast things can change in the field if you uncover something that you didn't realize, you got an earth shattering event. So the planning, combining these plans was really helpful. So thank you, Tracy. Yeah, you got a question, Bernadette? I got a chat here. Let's see. Okay, Chris Velia, Lexington area. Were winter weather impacts considered in the TAMP, such as freeze thaw cycles, road salt corrosion, etc.?
So I've just jammed a mint in my mouth, but the answer to that is no, we've not considered winter impacts. What we've seen historically when you look at winter weather impacts, whether it be on pavement deterioration or bridge decks, is that it is very difficult to quantify that. First of all, you have to get the data from the Weather Service. So you're looking at snowfall, but then you need to distinguish between freezing rain events. And then you have to look at how much salt we're applying to figure out if there's deterioration there. If it comes from the material, if it comes from the freeze thaw cycles. You also have to parse out the geographic conditions to understand if you're seeing advanced deterioration because of where you are in the state and the condition of the pavement that was pre-existing. So it's an intensely complicated data process, and we just have not been able to get to a point where we can see those impacts network-wide.
Hey, thank you. Okay, thanks, Tracy. Anybody got anything else to see? 13 chats. I must have missed. I'm on two different Zoom calls here, so let me see if I can figure out what I just did. Thanks, Tracy. Okay, future activities, we'll close that out. 30 minutes overdue for this meeting. Okay, so let me get to the next speaker here. If nobody else has any other questions. What time we got here? 10:04. Oh, we're maybe 9 minutes over. Let's see, Justin Harrod, let me go ahead and read their bios. Alternative fuel planning, Justin Harrod and Rob Frazier. Justin Harrod began his career with Kentucky Transportation Cabinet in 2010. Currently works for the Quality Assurance Branch Division of Highways, and his primary responsibilities center on the Value Engineering Program and Development Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Deployment Plan. He's a 2009 graduate of Murray State University, native of Frankfurt, and resides here with his wife, Shelley, and 3 children. And then Rob, let me go ahead and intro Rob too. Rob Frazier is, he's got 30 years experience in transportation engineering and planning, several cool degrees. And Rob is also the leader of the local STEAM education initiative, helping a group of students in Louisville to achieve their full potential. And he's got a few extra sentences on his bio, but he said, did you just read the first and the last piece? I said, I really like that mentoring piece at the end. So we definitely hit that in there. So I appreciate your work there.
I didn't say several cool degrees. I did not write.
Yeah, he didn't write that. I thought they were cool. Carnegie Mellon and Berkeley and stuff like that. So, okay. So with that being said, let's see, Justin, can you, yeah, okay, cool. You got it figured out.
I'm getting there.
Show your screen there and then the microphone. laser points up there. So share screens down there on the bottom, or I can see it actually. So I think you've already shared it. Is that good? Yeah, and the microphone there works too.
Okay. Well, good morning, everybody. It's nice this is my first in-person meeting since probably, I guess, February 2020. So it's nice to, see some faces in the crowd and to not be just through a virtual endeavor. And so what we're talking about today is what Mikhail Pelfrey kind of alluded to as he was speaking, was planning for EVs for Kentucky. This is something that's coming. And so we just want to try and obviously get ahead of it and help everybody out as much as we can here at the cabinet. So one of today's agenda will be, we will be doing a very high level sort of EV 101, along with sort of some barriers, funds coming to Kentucky, the requirements in the NEVI guidance, and also what it means towards the alternative fuel corridors. And then I think where y'all might get the most out of this is how you can get involved and prepared for the money that is coming. And then also the schedule, that the warp speed schedule that we are at currently. So just a quick high level overview. There's 3 types of electric vehicles. You have your hybrid electric vehicle, which is mainly a combustion engine, but then also as you brake, you kind of help to recharge the engine part of it. So, it's just a little bit of electric to kind of help when you're like idling, reduces idling. And so the next one would be plug-in hybrid. This is where it's kind of like a mixture. And this is where I believe like a lot of the ones in the state are currently kind of at, where you have, you have the option of being gas, but then you can also switch over to plug-in. And then also we have just battery electric vehicles. And this is the vehicle that we will be focusing on in regarding to the NEVI program. And as you see, it has to be just fully plugged in. And so this is sort of the initiative that Federal Highways has taken to help with these vehicles. So you have 3 different types of charging stations, levels 1 through 3. Level 1 is just your basic, very slow charging, takes like 2 to 3 days. And so you don't really hear a lot about level 1. And then what you all are probably more familiar with is level 2s, as you have probably seen those throughout the state, as there's roughly about 100 of them, I believe, 100 plus of them throughout the state that have sort of been built over the years. And those are just continuing to expand. And these are your chargers that kind of take up to 10 hours to kind of fully charge a vehicle. And so a lot of places of business where their employees work will install some. And so as your vehicle can charge while you're at work, if you forgot to do it at home that night. I will say that studies show about 80 to 90% of charging will take place in the home environment. However, we have to prepare for that 10 to 20% that has to travel, through our state or in our state. And that's kind of what the Federal Highways Initiative is hinting at. And then your level 3s, which we have just a few in the state. I believe we're up to about 12 or 13. And these are your very fast charging stations. It takes 30 minutes or less in order to fully charge your vehicle. And so this is the level of charging that Federal Highways is focused on with their level 3. And you'll see that it's direct current fast charging, DCFC, as you'll see it later in the slides. And so I'll turn it over to Rob to kind of speak to a little bit of the barriers.
Yes. Right, so there are various barriers. These are barriers to adoption of electric vehicles broadly. And so one issue that this program that we're going to talk more about addresses directly is the lack of charging infrastructure that Justin just talked about. There's the issue of range anxiety. So if I am going to go kind of towards the limit of what my vehicle can do, it's a problem. Will I be able to charge and get back? That whole range anxiety issue is real. And then long charging time. So you saw the range there, and the technology continues to improve. So all of these things are, we're getting addressed over time. And that's part, but there are other barriers such as supply chain issues, and that went too fast. Apologize. I'm gonna use the clicker. Yeah, because it's just kind of doing its own thing. All right, so there are other ones such as the number of vehicles on the market, types of vehicles, and those. So, but these are the ones that specific to what we're talking about today. Then barriers to the infrastructure deployment, the deployment of the charging infrastructure itself. One issue is the utility infrastructure itself. There are locations where we do not have the infrastructure that's needed for the DCFC stations. And then there are utility demand charges, which are typically associated with industrial users. That's where you've got as residential users, we don't really experience that. But if you've got a large power draw for an industrial site, you need additional equipment, and you need to be able at any time to draw down a large amount of power. And there are charges that go along with that. And so that comes into play. And then we've got gaps in our charging infrastructure that need to be addressed. Then the last item that is kind of surfacing right now is, are there codes and regulations that need to be considered? Do we need to be looking at some of those? Those are presenting barriers to the infrastructure for charging. And so I'm going to touch on briefly the kind of historic looking back, where have we been, and then you can kind of see where we're going at the end of that graph. But in the last few years, the electric vehicles, which is the middle line there, has really begun to grow nationally. These are national trends kind of by quarter last several years. And you can see that the plug-in hybrids that Justin mentioned, that middle one, they are growing, but not nearly as much as the battery electric. And then the standard hybrid, they are also growing, but they're not anticipated to continue that. The electric vehicles are expected to ultimately surpass the standard hybrids. And this is where Kentucky is. So you look at the graph to the left, different scale, we're at just under 1% for sales in our state. So just under 1 out of 100 are battery electric vehicles. And then that's about the table on the right, it's about 0.1% of the total registered vehicles are battery electric in Kentucky. And there is a lag between the registrations and the sales. And that lag is due to this 20-year, lower right box, 20-year time frame for the entire fleet to turn over. It takes a long time for a vehicle fleet to turn over. So that will come into play. So it will take a while for even a sales increase for the number of vehicles to reflect that.
Yeah, and one thing that we believe will happen as the battery plants get established in our state, we think that 1%, is kind of like a pent-up demand that will then start to sort of meet that national average or even go above it as more economic development comes to Kentucky regarding electric vehicles. All right, so the main purpose of wanting to be here today with you is to, we've talked a little bit about the 101 aspect of EVs. And so now we're transitioning into what exactly is it that Federal Highways is wanting. So Federal Highways, the IIJA, Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, was passed back in mid-November of last year. And we immediately started to collaborate with EEC and other state agencies to start looking at what is it that Kentucky can do to get ready, because we knew future guidance was coming. We wanted to try and get ahead of it as much as we could without the guidance, but not obviously get too far ahead. And so on February 10th, Federal Highways has released that guidance. And then as from that, they did their National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure, NEVI, Formula Fund program, and then also a discretionary program, which will be competitive grants. And so that's 2 funding sources that will be encompassing this overall project. All right, so what does this mean for Kentucky? Well, for Kentucky, it means that $69 million over the next 5 years will be coming to our state. 10 million in the first fiscal year, and then somewhere between 10 and 15 million for the next 4 years after that per fiscal year. And these are federal highway fiscal years. So the purpose of the NEVI funds is to build a national network from coast to coast, border to border with Canada and Mexico in order to have just all the major corridors covered for any type of people traveling with electric vehicles. And so, you know, in this 5-year process will, by the end of this, have that network, or that's the goal, is to have that network. And so the build out portion is going to be focused on alternative fuel corridors, and I'll touch base on those in just in a few slides. But Federal Highways is prioritizing interstates as they want to kind of start big and then you know, leave it to the states to then go smaller. And then, as Mikhail mentioned earlier, we have a deployment plan due by August 1st. And so this is where I kind of get that warp speed, is that, you know, the guidance was released on February 10th. There's more guidance being released on May 13th. And just like every few days, there's something new coming out that, you know, we're having to, you know, either react to or encompass into this plan. And so it really is just kind of a warp speed kind of thing. And so the second part of the discussion funding aspect is discretionary grants, which will be coming. And these are not as strict as the NEVI formula grant funds. And so there'll be a total of 2.5 billion open to all of the country over the next 5 years. And so one thing that we wanted to sort of do today, and you'll see this later in the presentation, is, you know, grant applicants should start preparing now for when that guidance is released later this year. You're sort of that further much ahead. And so you're not having to play catch up, and you can be some of the first hopeful grant, you know, applications that get submitted. And so that's one thing that we want to try and do today is, you know, what is it that you might need to do prior to that. And so community charging stations are expected to be eligible. So this is, you know, anywhere in the state and not having to be sort of NEVI compliant. And so it kind of really opens up, you know, what the funding covers for local areas and jurisdictions. And then it can also be used for other fuel types, hydrogen, propane, and natural gas as well, which are some of the other alternative fuels. So as I mentioned, alternative fuel corridors. The NEVI funding is kind of a slippery slope. It's sort of tied to it, but there's also like an asterisk next to that. So from years for the rounds 1 through 5, you know, there's already some current fuel corridors already out there for electric vehicles for Kentucky. The new round of nominations, this is also released on February 10th in conjunction with the federal guidance with the NEVI program. Which is due May 13th, which is when the next round of guidance comes out, with a current emphasis on EV charging corridors. And like I said previously, the emphasis from Federal Highways is to focus on your interstates first, and then kind of do like a trickle down effect, if that is what the state wants. All right, so with these DCFC chargers, with the NEVI program, a lot of requirements come with that. And this is where we start to get into the, in some future slides as to what Kentucky might be considering. And it's a very delicate balancing act. So these charging stations have to be along these corridors. They have to be, if they are along these alternative fuel corridors, they can't be more than 50 miles apart, 1 mile from the corridor. And you will see that it has to have 4 charging ports at least 150 kilowatts per port for a total of 600 kilowatts per station. And I was in a conference last week where someone said these are pretty much kind of like small Walmarts. So I thought that was interesting to kind of compare that one of these charging stations is almost similar to like a super Walmart. Another caveat is that it has to be open to the public 24/7. And so that's something else that we have to consider, as proprietary technology like Tesla's do not count towards this program. And there's a lot of Tesla supercharger stations going into the state. I know Buc-ee's opened up in Richmond yesterday, and I know there's I saw the huge crowd there, and so they have partnered with Tesla to put in some superchargers as well. I'll get to your. Go ahead.
I was just wondering what you meant by it being like a small Walmart.
So during the conference that I was at last week, someone had mentioned that Walmart kind of like on a daily basis kind of uses like 550 sort of kilowatts to kind of power their main sort of building and systems and stuff. And so I thought that was interesting that, we're having to install chargers that are like 600 kilowatts. And so it's essentially like a small Walmart that you're installing for the power consumption is all that I meant by that. No problem. And so one of the caveats also that I mentioned comes with a little asterisk is the need to build out corridors before going off corridors. And that sort of gets into, where are we at currently for EVs? Well, currently we have Interstate 65, 75, 71, and 275 in the state from previous rounds that were designated as EV pending corridors. And so Federal Highways has mentioned you have to start here first. Since these were nominated in the past, this is where you have to start first. And so with the first fiscal year given about a little over the $10.3 million, that's sort of what we're sort of, as you can see, it's a balancing act of what do you nominate versus building out what's existing versus being able to move off the corridor so you can stretch the funds more because you're not having to be NEVI compliant. And so, that's one of the things that KYTC is trying to do currently is, how fast can we get these built out so we can get off the corridors to make this money spread out more for you all, but also meeting what Federal Highways wants. And so that kind of leads us to some of the data that we're trying to go over as to, what is it that, we will need to look at. And that encompasses, these long distance travel trips of 150 plus miles and the build out cost. Each of these stations, the joint office from DOT and DOE from Federal Highways has mentioned that each of these I don't want to use superchargers because that's Tesla's term, but these chargers will be roughly about $1 million to $1.5 million a piece. And that is mainly due to the 600 kilowatt and having to upgrade a system if need be. And so it's really made the cost of these chargers grow exponentially for being able to kind of understand, and then how much funding we're getting to balance that out as well. And so there's just a lot of, plus the federal guidance. And so there's a lot of things. And like I said, each week there's like something new coming out that we're trying to make sure that we get in. And so it's kind of leading us to, as you see on your map, 65, 75, 71 are already corridors that we know we have to look at. But what are some other corridors that might benefit or whatnot from either getting nominated or perhaps not getting nominated, so we can then focus on building out what we have so we can get off corridor? And do we need to put $1 million stations at some of these locations, or can we get away with installing just a couple $100,000 stations? And so that's part of the balancing act that we're currently trying to go through. And so in summary, kind of what all this means is, build out means NEVI compliance, which is, what I've stated on the previous slide as being, all those charging stations and the cost of it being a, 1.2 million per station. It requires build out of the alternative fuel corridors. So like I said, we have to focus on 65, 75, 71, and 275 first. Now, once built out is adding AFCs in that deadline of May 13th would increase the build out requirement. And so that's where, like I said, we're trying to focus on what is it that could benefit from having these $1 million charges versus, do we want to start moving off of the corridor and then being able to reach a lot more of the US routes and parkways and stuff a little quicker, as to not being able to wait for this approval, which gets to the next line, which is once built out is approved, then NEVI funding becomes more flexible. You don't have as many requirements. You don't have to have the 600 kilowatt. And so it kind of reverts back in my mind to what the old standard kind of was, which was like, one station with 2 ports perhaps. And so, but with the NEVI build out challenges, that includes supply chain issues. I'm sure y'all have heard from this from other transportation meetings that, there's a backlog of certain materials. I think right now for us, for the materials that would be needed for these charging stations, it's running anywhere from like 3 to 6 months, if not more. I've heard some states say more. And then also a Buy America requirement is also in with these chargers. And so that's another federal requirement that is sort of, we're having to balance, as well as the more chargers we have to implement on these AFCs, the longer it might take, because we have to meet so many requirements, including the Buy America component. And as I said, the US DOT guidance kind of prioritizes interstate system first. And so now I'll pass it over back to Rob.
So the plan that's due by August 1st and is comes, the guidance gives some requirements for that plan and for the just kind of how the program will be structured. So it's an 80-20 match. And these are just a couple of, it's the full guidance, but these are just a couple key takeaways. The 80-20 match, that private entities can be and are encouraged to be involved in, and that can be construction operations and even ownership. So it's a fairly unique program in that at the end of this, even though it's federal money, that may actually be privately owned and operated. And then the guidance outlines all kinds of different siting considerations in terms of, you've now kind of heard more about the importance of the electric grid. We want to make sure that we've got sufficient power, but they also are looking to make sure that these are sited in places where there are services, that we're serving rural communities, communities that are underserved, and just making sure that that the plan is well thought out, and that the locations where these will be constructed to build out the system, that's done taking into account a wide variety of important factors. So the guidance is pretty clear on those things. And then, but I will say there, Justin mentioned the new guidance, so there continue to be discussions to further clarify some of those things to make sure that the plan gets us where we need to be in a timely manner. So that leads us to the thing that Justin mentioned kind of early on. How can your community get ready? And these are just kind of the start of the discussion, but prepare for the discretionary grant applications. And we've talked about DCFC, but the level 2 charging that many of you maybe have already seen, that is also potentially, that's out there as well. And so it's not all about the fast charging. And so as you're thinking about future grant applications, it could be for either one. And there are some opportunities out there already today, and more are expected. And so it's something that you can already be kind of planning for some of that. And so then looking at the barriers to permit, station permitting implementation, that I put that on the slide earlier. That means looking if you've got planning and zoning, and how might those present barriers? Are the changes needed? You need to look at your building codes or other codes and regulations. So there's a variety of things. Again, this is the beginning of the conversation, and this conversation is going to kind of be ongoing, and it's ongoing across the country as other communities struggle to kind of get themselves prepared, or work to get themselves prepared as well. And there are model codes out there. There are some states, communities that are further along, and some that are kind of lagging behind, and so there's some that you can go and see what others have done already. And then kind of final, and maybe most important, is just this plan and begin to have the conversation and consider what the needs, the opportunities are in your specific community. So we just tourist attractions, underserved areas. It could be apartment buildings. It could be places where there isn't a lot of power because of the large power draw. And so beginning to look at that and think about that and prepare and plan, now's a great time to do that and get ready for what is kind of on its way. And the last item is the schedule. So this schedule is really focused on the things that are happening right now that the cabinet is handling. So we had a stakeholder meeting back in March. There's another one coming up in May. And on May 13th, the cabinet will submit the alternative fuel nominations, if any, and then the stakeholder meeting in June. And you just all leading up to plan being ready to submit in July in advance of that August deadline. They are glad to see them early. They have 50 plans to review in a short amount of time. So they're hoping to not get them all at the last minute. So I think with that, we are at the end.
Yeah, thank you guys.
One thing I'll say real quickly is that, we are working on a sort of Word document for you all to kind of a how-to to kind of send to you all to help with the, as Rob mentioned in the previous slide, looking at, building codes and other types of regulations that might have to be looked at now as you start to prepare and form grants for not just the discretionary grant coming out through the NEVI, but as as from my conference last week, there's about $50 billion out there right now for EVs. Now, not all of that is just for EV charging, but that encompasses freight, buses, and all that. But so we wanted to let you all know that we're starting to have those conversations of how can we get this down to a planning level to share stuff with you all to take back to those committees that you're on, to share back with those people, and then get questions filled back to us, so we can answer those questions or ask the joint office some answers. We've had 2 conversations with the joint office. I think we've asked probably about almost 30 to 35 questions. About half of those we're waiting to get some type of answer from. So I just want to know that, this is all a fast moving system. Jason. Can you speak up just a little bit?
My bad. A couple things. Are these going to be regulated by like the utility commission? So, like electric charging thing. How is the cost structure going to be for these stations?
So we had a meeting just yesterday with the PSC on sort of how might this go? And, this is new for PSC as well. And so they don't have a quorum yet just now, as some of y'all might know. So they can't have those type of conversations just yet. But they do recognize that this will be perhaps an issue going forward as to making sure that as these stations are implemented and that the state does not want to own or maintain them, we just want to help give the money and then get out of the way. So as utilities kind of take over, or whoever the private entity might be that takes over, that will be some ongoing discussions that PSC and utilities will have. And so that's about where we are so far with that.
Okay, so number 2 is have you all started, the criteria, like say Jason Crawford wants to install a station at Red River Gorge. What's the criteria who the state is going to choose gets these basically 3 stations?
So we have not gotten that far yet. We're still
Got a couple months left.
I know, yes, that's correct. Everything's moving so fast, and we're right now looking at what type of contract mechanism can we use to write this, these grants or these proposals, because since we don't want to own and maintain it, it's a very blurry line, because that hasn't been the issue in the past, because obviously with bridges and roads and stuff, we've owned or maintained to some degree. And so since we don't want to do that with these, it kind of makes it a little bit difficult to decide, how do we go forward? Some things have to require General Assembly approval, which that session just ended. And so, that would be, kind of having to wait until next year, depending on that kind of contract mechanism. And so there's a lot of things that we have to try and go through in order to decide, okay, once we can get this funding in, once we get off of the AFCs, the alternative fuel corridors, then how can that money be spread out to you all over the state? And so, but like I said, first we have to focus on those alternative fuel corridors, which is why the discretionary grant funding and some other grants that are out there is stuff that you all might be able to apply for as you wait for us to get off of these alternative fuel corridors and then have some spare money to then spend after the first year or two.
Even with AFCs, I mean, like I said, the state's not going to maintain, the state's going to apply. I mean, how can I get on some kind of list to be chosen to be one of these that's on AFC?
So what we're doing with the utilities and with HDR is looking at and coordinating with other states is where are these stations going to be able to go every 50 miles on these AFCs. And so, once we have that, then we can kind of get an idea as to where these chargers might be able to go on those AFCs. Now, once we can get off of AFCs, then that kind of, we're not bound by so many requirements, and it opens up more of a, just opens up more opportunities at that point. So it's still a work in progress. Yeah.
You might want to mention that if anyone's interested in hosting a charger, there is a site available that they can plug that information into.
Yes, if you go to this site that's on your screen, it will link you to a EEC link that will then take you to where you can want to host a charger, perhaps. You can put in that data. It by no means that you'll be chosen, but it at least allows us to kind of see, who wants to have a charger where. Is there 3-phase power there? Would it have to be upgraded? And so that it kind of gives us an idea of, these stations would meet the NEVI compliance, or, once we get off corridor, then, it opens up maybe a little bit more. So that it's kind of just a lot of moving pieces of the puzzle that will come into play eventually. Now, one of the things that we have learned is, this is going to be a 5-year process, and Federal Highways knows that this will be an evolving process. So for this first year, what we submit can and will change in our resubmittal for the second year and updating.
Yeah, good questions, guys. Let's see. We've got several questions. It's about 10. What time is it? It's 10:40. We're supposed to take a break at 10:30. Let's online audience, go ahead and put your questions in the chat box. We'll try to get to you maybe after the break. But
I'll be around too if you want to ask questions.
yeah, the contact information on the page here is a good one too. We might take maybe one more question.
Any questions that you think of later or something, just please email the evplan@ky.gov, and we will make sure to get back with you the next day or 2 or 3.
Yeah, so Sue, go ahead, Bernadette.
I have a question. Well, this is something you can ask your PowerPoint about the barriers. And this is a question probably that Lona Brewer. Lona, will you stand up so you can see who you are? It's probably Bernadette Energy and Environment guy. And the question is, because to detect a barrier, the power grid all over the United States is not really capable at this point in time to handle all of these things being implemented at once. So what I would like to know from Mona, have you worked with the electric companies to determine, or have you already know this information, which ones have the capabilities right now and to prioritize the implementation and startup of all these?
Well, so
That's basically what Justin was saying, is that we have requested that information from all of the utilities in coordination.
Yeah.
All of the utilities in the state are working on telling us, thank you. They're working on telling us where that 3-phase power already exists. All of the utilities in the state have told us that they have enough power to build out in Kentucky what needs to be built out on our interstate system. The question is, where are the problem areas? I mean, we're looking at putting in, 600 kilowatts every 50 miles. So where would there be issues? What the utilities are actually seeing as more of an issue, Bernadette, is housing developments going in and putting in level 2 chargers in all of the homes in places where they don't necessarily have transformers available to push that power to those developments. So planning is going to be very important as we move forward with the utilities as well as transportation. One other thing is that there is also resiliency money and infrastructure money for the utilities. And they're very interested in obtaining those funds as well to be able to move the electric grid even further. Does that answer your question?
Thank you, Lona. That was Lona Brewer. I see Kim Tompkins was asking. Lona Brewer's from Energy and Environment Cabinet, right?
Yes.
She was just about to speak at this conference too, but I think we ended up just doing Justin and Rob. Okay, so is everybody good for now? I guess put them in the chat box, that kind of stuff. We were scheduled for a break at 10:30. Are you guys okay with going ahead and trying to get Evansville MPO in? Is everybody? I mean, the audience can stand up and walk around a little bit if you want to while we read the bio if you want. Thank you guys for the presentation.
I'll be around if you have any questions.
Okay, thanks, Justin. Thanks, Rob. So yeah, you guys feel free to stand up, stretch around, stretch a little bit. We'll probably go ahead and try to squeeze in Evansville MPO here before the break, and then we'll take 10 minutes. And the bike ped, it's pretty much all bike ped after the break, so we'll try to catch us back up after the break. Okay, so the next speakers are from Evansville MPO. Aaron Schreifer and Shinbo Mi. So let me read their bios. So you guys, are you guys on?
Yep, we're here. We're in our office today.
Okay, sorry, we're a little bit over schedule. Let me go ahead.
Oh,
read
you're
the bios.
fine.
Okay, so Aaron Schreifer is a senior transportation planner for Evansville Henderson MPO. She's responsible for leading the development of the MTP and the call for projects application, including the subsequent scoring prioritization process for the TIP. She works with local jurisdictions developing and implementing bike ped plans and projects. And she holds a Bachelor of Urban Planning and Development, Master Urban Design, both from Ball State. And she's worked with Evansville MPO for 11 years. When she's not at work, Erin spends her time chasing around a 4-year-old daughter and 5-month-old son. And the next, go ahead and read both their intros. Here's Shinbo Mi is also a senior transportation engineer. He's got a Master of Science in Aerospace Engineering from Purdue University. And 4 years with the MPO, Shinbo does engineering and modeling. He conducts transportation engineering analysis and gives design recommendations. Shinbo builds demand models from scratch, traffic simulation models, and other data analysis models. Shinbo says he's lazy, but so he likes to automate things. So thank you guys for being on here, and we'll go ahead and take you 10 minutes. I think I had 10 minutes on the agenda for you, so go ahead.
All right, thank you very much. We'll try to go through this somewhat quickly so you guys can get to your break. For those of you that might not be familiar with us, the Evansville MPO is a bi-state MPO between Indiana and Kentucky. We do our planning in Vanderburgh and Warwick counties in southwestern Indiana and Henderson County in western Kentucky. And between our 3 counties, we serve nearly 289,000 people. So today we're going to go through, I'm going to be doing a general overview of red flag investigations and the ways that we incorporate them into our planning process. And then after that, Shinbo is going to walk us through an ArcGIS demonstration of a tool that automatically conducts a red flag investigation and how that can generate the accompanying reports. So a red flag investigation is done through GIS mapping to provide a general overview of the environmental condition of the project area. Red flag investigations can identify areas or sites that may need additional environmental work or studies before deciding on project specifics or can highlight areas that may need to be avoided altogether when developing projects. At the Evansville MPO, we complete red flag investigations to get a high level understanding of potential impacts of projects included in our Metropolitan Transportation Plan. So when doing a red flag investigation, 5 sections are evaluated: infrastructure, water resources, mining and mineral exploration, hazardous material concerns, and ecological information. A map is created for each of these categories to identify any potential issues. A half-mile buffer is created around each project. Here's a hazardous materials map for Oak Hill Road in Vanderburgh County. The half-mile buffer is shown in the green, and the project on Oak Hill Road is shown in blue. The legend reflects all of the features that show up on the map. Before, we would have to manually add all of these features for each section to see what falls within the half-mile buffer and tally them. But Shimbo, he's going to show us how that process can be automated. Currently, though, the template is provided in ArcGIS from NDOT. They provide the statewide data for all sections, giving all the MPOs in Indiana access to this information. Once the maps are created, a report is filled out. That report template is also provided by NDOT. All MPOs have access to these report templates, and because of this, all MPOs have the ability to complete and submit a red flag investigation for formal approval from the state. This can potentially save the LPA during the environmental process. When we do these investigations during our NTP planning process, we just do them at a preliminary level. We don't submit these to NDOT for formal approval. So when the MPO conducts a red flag investigation, we also look at a few additional categories that aren't required. We call them the equity factors, where we look at minority population, households below poverty, and households with no vehicles. We conduct red flag investigations for all projects that will be proposed in the Metropolitan Transportation Plan. This helps us get a sense of who will be impacted by a project that we're proposing. And we also look at these same equity factors again during our call for projects prioritization process that is part of our transportation improvement program development. Historical resources like historic properties, sites, and districts, those used to be included as a required category, but they've recently been removed from the red flag process. It's now all included in the Section 106 process. But because we have all of this data locally, we still look at that as part of our red flag process. This is the infrastructure red flag investigation table that I've taken out of our MTP, our 2045 MTP. Each project that's recommended in our plan has a red flag investigation completed in-house by our staff, not only to highlight any potential concerns, but also to ensure planning and environmental linkages are being considered during project development. Each of the 5 sections that are looked at during a red flag, infrastructure, water resources that we just talked about, all of these have a table in our plan showing the number of features identified for potential concerns, and as well as the equity factors that we just mentioned. Those also have a table in the plan. These features are all manually added in ArcGIS and entered into tables like this. So with that, I'll turn it over to Shimbo, and he's going to show us how we can achieve the same outcome by using a tool in ArcMap to automate this process.
All right, so I'm gonna speed up and just make sure everyone focus for another few minutes, and we'll all be released to the break. All right, so I'm gonna do a very short and quick demonstration of the red flag investigation tool I developed to automate the red flag analysis process. Okay, so you can see my screen, right? Just to make sure. Okay, so the tool is based on the software ArcGIS Pro, hold on 1 second. Let me see whether I can make my mouse. I can highlight my cursor here. Okay, here. So the tool is based on ArcGIS Pro, and I already have the project interface opened up. So the project is inside this folder, and I basically double click this and open up the project in ArcGIS Pro. And what you're seeing in the center is a map of Indiana. And this is actually the in-dot red flag features package Aaron mentioned. So on the left-hand side contents pane, this DOT slash blah, 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 that's the red flag feature layer groups from in-dot. So I'm gonna zoom in to our region, our Evansville region. But you are not seeing any red flag features because those are actually made invisible. I can actually turn them on, but it will looks very messy and not clean. So basically we turn them invisible for default. So we can see clean map, but it doesn't impact the run of our tool. So we can keep it invisible. And also beyond that, beside that red flag features layers, we also have the road. This is basically the project we're going to investigate. So I choose Morgan Avenue from here to here. You can see on the map, this is the road. And basically we're going to draw a buffer and then see what red flag features from these layers are inside that buffer, but all done automatically. So to pull up our red flag investigation tool, I'm gonna, on the right-hand side catalog pane, I'm gonna open up the toolbox, and my toolbox, and double click on the tool. So it will ask for the input road, basically the Morgan Avenue, and the buffer distance, which you can actually specify the value, the unit, but I'm gonna leave it as default for now. And also we can add some feature layers, the red flag feature layers here. So on the right-hand side corner, if we click run, it will automatically run the tool. But I'm not gonna run it this way. I'm gonna be a little bit even lazier. So I don't want to manually select those red flag features. So I created this task over here. So I can actually open up this task and those red flag features are already here for us. So all we need to do is to select the road and hit run. It will automatically running the tool. So before I run the tool, I'll just show you what's gonna be created are the reports here, that 5 reports for these 5 layer groups. So to make sure I'm not cheating, so I'm gonna delete this report folder. Okay, so I just deleted the reports folders and now I'm gonna run the tool. So while it is running, you will actually be able to see it is creating the buffer here. And then it will actually be clipping those red flag features inside that buffer. See, it is actually clipping those features and it will iterate through all those feature layer groups and then generate 5 reports. And while the tool is running, I'm just gonna give you a glimpse of the code behind this tool. So this is the tool, these are the codes behind the tool. This tool is a customized tool, is not a ArcGIS tool, so you can't find it in your machine. So while it is still running, I'm gonna come over here and see now the report folder is already generated. So I'm gonna open up this folder and you can see those reports actually named the way which is understandable. For example, this RFI means red flag investigation. And Morgan Avenue is the road, is the name of the road, basically Morgan Avenue here. So if we change the name of the road, it will be reflected here. And also the half-mile buffer distance, if you change if you change the number value, change the unit, it's also be reflected here. And also the name of the red flag feature layer groups at the end of the file name. All right, hopefully it's gonna finish running very soon. See, now we already have 4 reports here. Okay, so while it's still running, it's just that you know what you're seeing used to be all manually done by one of our analysts, which was both time consuming and also requires fairly extensive knowledge in ArcGIS. But right now, what you just from what you just saw, to use this tool, you don't need much knowledge at all. You just need to select the road and hit run. And the only additional thing was if you did not have a road available, you just basically need to know more to draw a line which representing that road, and that's it. And don't worry, and actually I have the step-by-step user instructions as well. So users can read those and follow the instructions to use this tool. All right, so see, we already finished our running here, and it actually took 2 minutes and 17 seconds for all 5 layer groups. It's kind of fast. So we hit finish and come back to our reports. So I'm gonna pull up one report as an example. So in the reports, here's the title, which basically named the same in the same fashion as how we named the file name, and also the map frame containing the buffer and the red flag distance, red flag features inside that buffer, and also the legend basically showing what those red flag features are, and also the counts of the features inside the buffer. For example, we have, for this one, we have 15 leaking underground storage tanks inside that buffer. So we know how many are there in the buffer. And we're gonna pull up another one, water resources. We can see those water features as well. This one, because the water features are line and area features, it's not technically within the buffer, but intersecting with the buffer. So it will make sense. So water resources, this map and the legend. All right, so that's basically the demonstration of the tool. We ran the tool, and it looks like nothing have happened, but actually we generated these 5 reports automatically. All right, so that's the demonstration. So if you have any questions for either Aaron or me, feel free to ask. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Aaron and Shimbo. See, does the audience have any questions? Let me check the chat box here. Yeah, no, nobody's in the chat box. So let's see this tool. You guys created this tool in-house, is that right?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so yeah, the codes there and all that kind of stuff. Are you guys, I guess you're willing to share that if people want to kind of expand into their areas?
Yes, we can share this tool. Yeah, that's no
Okay.
problem.
That's neat. It's fascinating and helpful with all the GIS technology these days. Let's see, that got us back a little bit closer. Does anybody have any questions in the audience? I didn't see any hands. Bernadette's got a question. Hold on, Bernadette.
I just want to know how much of the data they had to collect themselves, or did they get all this data from other sources?
Oh, so this data are from INDOT. Actually, I'm gonna come back to the map here. So those data, those red flag feature layers are all from INDOT. And actually in the instruction, there are the steps how to download this data from INDOT. But for Kentucky, you will need to figure out how to do it for Kentucky.
Okay, yeah, thanks. Okay, guys, let's see. It's 11 o'clock. Let's just take 5 minutes if you guys are okay with that. Just get up and use the restroom, whatever you need to do. And I'll talk with the bike ped guys that were scheduled to talk after. Maybe we'll try to get everybody back out by noon. So take about 5 minutes and we'll come back at 11:05. All right, thanks, guys.
Thank you.
No answer.
Well, that was a really good tool, but when
Okay, welcome back, guys. We're going to go ahead and start. So let me find their bios. And Scott Thompson, if you're on the Lexington MPO, I told the other bike ped guys, we'll just do what you can, at least 5-10 minutes. Okay, so the next speakers, almost there, are Lindsay Walker and Patrick Eggemeyer. Is that right? Okay, so Lindsay Walker, I'll go ahead and read both their bios, is a PE, PTOE, AICP, currently works as a senior transportation planner engineer, and also serves as the division manager of planning group at HMB Professional Engineers here in Frankfurt. She's got a variety of interests: reading, baking, running her 3 boys around sports. She has been to all Major League Baseball parks, which is cool, and is working on catching up on the kids. So let's see, Patrick Eggemeyer is a PE and is a highway design engineer with HMB Professional Engineers. Over 8-year career at HMB, he's been fortunate to work on many impactful projects, with this Kentucky 30 project being one of his favorites. He was one of the lead designers, taking it from preliminary line and grade through final design. Aside from work, Patrick has 3 boys, 5, 2, and 1, and enjoys spending time outdoors. So welcome, guys, and we're looking forward to the Kentucky 30 presentation. Go ahead. Yeah, here, let's see if I can get them started sharing the screen. Yeah, this is the one you guys wanted, the story map, right?
Yes. Went a
Okay.
little outside the box on this one because we really like our story maps.
Okay, let me close out of this. Close out. Let's see, we had this up a little bit earlier.
It was up, it just needed to be shared.
Oh, it was?
Yep.
Did I just close it? Try to pull it up again. Hold on just a minute.
But gee, that's a fun fact for the morning between the 2 of us. I mean, we have a basketball team of boys.
Yeah, I didn't know.
Yeah, we got an alternate. We're good to go.
Okay, so share screen, share. Okay, I think you're good. Okay, yeah, I can see it.
That's a good size.
And then I guess, can everybody hear, am I muted or can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
I know.
Let's see, online audience, you guys, can everybody hear? Somebody type in the chat box, I guess, yes. Yeah, go ahead.
Looks like I'm muted. Sorry about that. All right, this presentation covers the reconstruction of Kentucky 30, spanning districts 10 in Owsley County and District 11 in Jackson County. And this map here kind of shows the overall corridor, which begins near I-75 in London and extends east towards Boonville and Beattyville. And you can see the existing, or the old Kentucky 30 corridor, as we've called it here, in red compared to the green. The existing is about 45 miles and the new corridor is about 35 miles. And this presentation specifically will focus on this segment of it. And here's another kind of, so what's in green here is what our presentation will focus on. And one of the main kind of objectives of this, project and corridor was to improve access and mobility and connectivity from I-75 to, the eastern part of the state, Owsley County up to Beattyville and the Mountain Parkway. This project was also the final link connecting up the adjacent sections to the west here. And there was 4 construction segments that have been constructed to the west, and then there were 2 to the east. And this piece right here in the middle, this green, is was the final link. And the project team comprised of officials from districts 10, 11, central office, DEA, geotech, consultants. We had Palmer, Prime AE, who was integrated at the time, geotechnology, HMB, property owners and utility owners. And to make this project as we get into the schedule of it, a possibility, the teamwork and everybody collaborate closely to make this project happen was pretty impressive. I'll jump into some of the existing and proposed conditions with, and I'll just kind of highlight some of these. So the posted speed limit for the existing route was 55. Now the operational speed was much less. It was more like 40, which goes to show you how poor the geometrics of this section of road was. I touched on this. The existing was 13.5 miles. The new alignment is 10 miles. Of the whole corridor, there was a 10-mile reduction, and 3.5 miles of it was just in this section of Kentucky 30. I'll touch on some of these. There were 97 substandard horizontal curves, 93 substandard vertical curves that did not meet 55. The minimum radius was 150, and the max grade of 9%. Crash history, there were 34 crashes in Jackson, and this map kind of highlights kind of the clusters of them. And I mean, they were kind of, clustered up in some of the more severe curves, but the entire alignment was, there's really no tangent piece on this stretch of road, as you can see in the map here, and 18 crashes in Owsley. Jumping ahead to the proposed criteria, and I'll talk about this picture here first. So this is the 421 in Kentucky 30 existing interchange before this project was built, and you can see a couple things to note. It's an at-grade intersection currently, and this is 30 here. If you can kind of see where I'm clicking here, this is where the adjacent sections to which takes you to I-75 in Laurel County if you go out west this way. And then to continue on 30, you had to go north on 421 about a half a mile, and then continue on into Jackson and Owsley County. And then the project team came up with an idea to do a flyover with an approach coming off of it. And this was kind of our rendering of that interchange. And this is a construction photo. And then this bottom right picture shows it opened up to traffic today, which is pretty neat. I mean, it keeps both directions, 421 and 30. There's no stop condition. There was also a safety concern with there's about a 4 or 5% grade coming down this hill right here, and about a 4 or 5% grade going up. So it dramatically helped with that. The design for this section was 55. Something to note there too, every section to the west of us was designed at 60. So we dropped this down to 55 as far as the design, and that helped us save some earthwork cost. The terrain for this section was quite a bit more rugged than what was constructed to the west. One of the biggest, cost saving measures that we used was going from a 6%, going from a rolling of 5% to 6%. We increased it by that, going from rolling to mountainous. I was able to get our earthwork numbers down and kind of reduce costs. 2,000 foot was our minimum radius, versus 100 foot, which that puts that into perspective on how much, straighter and this alignment it was as well. Plenty of opportunities for passing, which there were none with the existing road. This was an access by permit job. We try to space them every 1,200 feet for safety, and we've got turn lanes at all the major approaches. Had 3 bridges, and this is the same bridge that was shown there a few minutes ago. They've got like some fold and form liners to kind of aesthetically make this bridge look a little better. And then it also had 8 reinforced box culverts on it. And these are just some pictures showing those off. I'll jump into the schedule now. So this project we began preliminary line grade back in fall of 2014. I started at HMB in the spring of 2014. So this is pretty much as I started, I jumped right in on this project, and there was a preferred alternative selected, later in the next year, about a year later. And one thing that wouldn't have been possible without we had weekly meetings with the consultant district right away. We went from May 2017 to in 7 months to December 2017 to have our final plan inspection. And then we had it ready for construction the spring of that year. So basically in a year time frame, we went from a preferred alignment to it being ready for construction. And there was a little bit of a funding hiccup, but we're expected. I mean, the main line is open to traffic now. We've got some other pictures in here that show that, but it's expected to be completed later this summer. We had weekly meetings to make this a possibility, and we had Skype and Zoom calls before it was really a thing to do that, which is kind of crazy to think now. It's completely second nature, and teamwork and communication were key in making this project a possibility and getting it done on the time frame that we all needed it to get done on. And I'll hand it over to Lindsay to talk about some of the project goals.
So to make this project happen, it had to be a collaborative process. It had to pull people together. Everybody had to be moving in the same direction to get this done on that kind of schedule. So there were several meetings, public open house meetings, that time before COVID when we could all get together and do these meetings, and then a private hearing, public hearing for the environmental process. So there were multiple opportunities for people to come in and voice their opinions and provide input on the goals that you see here. So these goals were things that we realized for this project. Some of these were absolutely essential, providing that system linkage. This was that last piece, as Patrick mentioned, tying the corridor together. So we have those logical termini to bring it all together. Addressing the safety concerns, as we noted, it's pretty much one big curve going through there. So number of horizontal and vertical deficiencies that we would look to address as part of this. One of the things that just really gets me is that emergency response time. That I grew up in Eastern Kentucky, Floyd County, and I know the roads there. It's twisty, windy, a lot of times really hard access to get to places. So by improving the roadway and the connectivity to get people in and out in an emergency situation, it is a huge win that you don't always maybe talk about in projects. Minimizing the impacts to property and utility owners. This one also kind of caught me by surprise, that you just never know sometimes when you're doing a project and what the community feel is going to be. I mean, ultimately, you're trying to make this project right for the community, but sometimes there's people that are going to be against it. Sometimes you're going to get everybody for it. This one was a case where people wanted this, they needed it for the area, and so the utility owners were hopping in there and they were owning the project, pushing things along, trying to get it done. We worked as a team with the design team for minimizing the environmental impacts, trying to limit those farms, which are always a big deal, with bisecting them, crossing streams or right angles to make it less of an issue. So those were a lot of the considerations going through the project, and everybody just was getting on board because they wanted to get this done. So for addressing those goals, the overall corridor, I mean, this is, and I'm not just talking about our one segment, but the overall corridor going from an hour and a half to 45 minutes, that's a huge time saving. And then just for our piece right here, it was at 21 minutes at 41 miles per hour, and now we're at 11 minutes at 55 miles per hour. So right there, you can see just how much people were saying that they didn't used to go to Corbin or other areas, but now they find themselves traveling a whole lot more and getting out there and having more access. And as I said, with just the emergency response time, all those minutes count. I mean, I think back to my crash last year. And if I didn't have accessibility, you know, you never know what would happen if you were just a few minutes later getting there. So it's scary. And it's great that there was a project here that you can make that happen and improve the quality of life. Thinking through the counties, that's part of the reason I think that this was such a good project here, is that typically we think of Eastern Kentucky having economical impacts, needing those boosts there. That I pulled some unemployment numbers just to kind of give a framework. In 2014, when this project was just getting going, Jackson County was listed as the 6th highest unemployment rate within the state. So at 11.4%, and the state average is around 6%. So much higher than that. It has, the good news is, over the years, looking at the 2014 to 2020, it has gone down. Not saying that this is a direct impact of the project, but I think there are things that are moving in place to try to help with some of these economically depressed areas. Owsley County was previously 14th and now is 41st. So as we make investments, hopefully in the community, you're going to see those changes. We mentioned the 6 system linkage, so it's connecting those two back up. And I mentioned the minimized impacts there. So you can see some of the farmland and some of the terrain that we were wanting to try to make sure we had as few impacts as possible. So this kind of is where the performance-based flexible solutions came into play. So after the preliminary engineering, the project was determined to be a candidate for performance-based flexible solutions. So looking, how can we look at the value, the cost, and the safety and find a good compromise? Because I will say right here, there's our costs as you'll see them. Construction at $72 million. That is a lot of money. Total 90 to invest in this. I mean, on paper, it looks like a great project, right? But then when you get into these numbers, you're saying, oh my goodness, we're going to spend $90 million. Are there ways that we can still make this work, but maybe save a little bit of money? So ultimately, that 72 was able to get down to 53, as Patrick noted, about the changing the terrain from the mountainous, from rolling to mountainous, and being able to have less of that earthwork piece of it. Also looking at the driving lanes, because we had sometimes gone with like the Cadillac version of 12-foot lanes, 12-foot shoulders, 10-foot shoulders. We don't necessarily need all that pavement. If we can shave that down a little bit, get 11-foot lanes, 8-foot shoulders, we can still accommodate the traffic in a safe manner. And looking that we're going to have truck climbing, we're going to have truck vehicles going through here, heavy vehicles. So it can all be managed there with saving a little bit of money. Other thing that noted was the truck climbing lanes were eliminated because we do have passing opportunities now. So those were just some things that we took a harder look at on this project. And so when you look at that savings, I mean, that's another project that can be done somewhere. So we don't always have to just stick to the exact, this is everything that we have to have in there, but what can we do to make it still work? And then maybe spend some money somewhere else. So ultimately, the project ended up winning national award, ACEC for PBFS, and then also this award for the National Recognition Award, American Council of Engineering Companies. So it turned out to be a successful project in a lot of ways, not just because we got a nice little plaque to sit up on the desk, but because, as you'll see here from the community feedback, we've gotten a few folks to chime in on it. I believe that all this was going to be made available later. So if you need to fully read the praise, you're welcome to do that. But just everybody is so excited about this for being in their community. So I think that's what we had to share on the project.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you guys. Kentucky 30, like you say, it's a impressive cost savings there, looking at the construction dollars and saving all that. Does anybody have any questions about Kentucky 30 project? Like Lindsay was saying, I'll post the link to this. This one's a story map, so I'll post the link on the website after the day. Thank you guys. Yeah, thanks again for considering the time. You know, I promise to get you guys out by noon. That's my goal here. It's our goal. I'm sure it's everybody's goal. So see, next presentation, let me go ahead and read the bios. We're going to talk about complete streets now. Keith Levin is professional engineer for Kentucky Transportation Cabinet. Currently is the bike ped coordinator, graduated from UK, bachelor's degree in civil engineering. And let's see, vice president Bike Walk Kentucky, league certified instructor, voting member of AASHTO Council, active transportation, personal interest traveling, biking, and rehabbing old houses. So got a partner there. Let's see, and Katie Rowe is for nearly a decade. Katie has practiced transportation planning and engineering for Gresham Smith. Her broad exposure to successful roadway, trail, and multimodal design projects has brought her planning practice to the next level. Katie's design background helps inform, prioritize more meaningful solutions to the public. Her personality communication skills allow Katie to easily interface with the public, making the complex understandable and easing the concerns of residents and stakeholders through process she believes in. So yeah, welcome guys, and we're interested to hear about where we're going with the complete streets policy. Go ahead.
Thank you, Jacob. Thank you all for that Kentucky 30 presentation. That was a complete street design, just so you know. I am Keith Levin. I'm with the Division of Planning, the Bicycle and Pedestrian Coordinator. I've been there about a year. I did a lot of work, bike and pedestrian related in the city of Lexington. And so when this opportunity presented itself, I thought this would be a good opportunity for me to be involved to doing this type of work across the state. I saw the opportunity with the leadership that we have within the cabinet to promote more bike and pedestrian projects, and also with the infrastructure bill, I saw a lot of opportunities to see a lot of projects happening across the state. So I was very excited about this project. But I wanted to talk a little bit about why does Kentucky need a complete street policy? We had a policy that was developed about 20 years ago. The fact that it's 20 years old is the reason why we need to update that. So we're going to also have a complete street manual as part of this project. So we'll have both a policy and a manual. And I'm hoping that we will be able to continue moving forward. We are looking at doing a statewide bicycle and pedestrian plan as well after that's completed. But one of the main reason is safety. We want to make our roads safer for all users. It addresses bicyclists and pedestrians, but also addresses the motor vehicle usage. We are just designing a road that will be for everybody all across the state, not just in urban areas, but in rural areas as well. Like I said, there's going to be a lot of funding that is going to be emphasizing complete streets. If once Kentucky gets a policy, we have addressed some of the requirements of the infrastructure bill, which is saying that you need to spend 2.5% of your planning funds on complete street activities. So by having that in place, we've addressed that. And it's a quality of life issue. Kentucky ranks very high in the obesity rate and inactivity. By having projects that give our citizens opportunity to do more biking and walking will help reduce those activities. And it's also a demand issue all across the state. In the short time that I've been within the cabinet, I am seeing more and more communities wanting to do more to address their downtowns, their small communities. What can we do to make living in these small towns better and making it more accessible, making it bike and walk friendly as is a way to accomplish that. So we do have a consultant, Gresham Smith, and Katie Rowe is going to do more detailed explanation of what our process is going to be. Katie?
Hi, yes, I'm Katie Rowe with Gresham Smith. Shout out to my Evansville friends. I'm actually originally from Evansville, Indiana, so it's fantastic to hear from you guys today. I've been working for Gresham Smith for 8 years now. I have been working out of primarily the Louisville office, but all across the state. I'm going to actually bounce through this. This is old information, as Mikhail alluded to earlier. There's a new report out with new information from the League of American Bicyclists about the state of bicycling in Kentucky.
And then there's the obligatory introduction to the Gresham Smith team. We also have Mike Sewell as part of our consultant team as well. He's a known state and national advocate and expert on multimodal and complete streets information as well. So, you know, as Mikhail and Keith have alluded to, complete streets are for everyone. You know, historically, it's kind of been considered this urban phenomena, and it isn't. Complete streets aren't new to Kentucky. You know, the latest report from the National Complete Streets Coalition actually identified 8 different communities, 2 counties, and then the statewide policy that either directly reference complete streets themselves or are otherwise a resolution or ordinance that address principles that are related to complete streets. So safe walking, safe biking, things like that. And we're seeing that all across the state. It's not just in our urban centers in Louisville and Lexington, but we're seeing it in places like Grant County and smaller communities in rural counties as well. Again, why complete streets? The biggest point here is improved safety. We want our walkers and our bikers and people taking transit and people driving their cars, folks who are delivering goods and services throughout the state to be able to do so in a safe manner. And so complete streets really aren't necessarily about you know, one specific corridor, although that's often how they're approached. It's more of a holistic examination of the transportation network across the state and how are we accommodating all of those modes on our streets. And we know that, you know, we can get people out of their cars. They do more shopping when they can walk around. They have access to healthy transportation choices. And, you know, when we make it safe and comfortable for people to do that, they're more likely to choose those modes of transportation in their communities. So complete streets are going to look different for everyone. Again, they're very highly context sensitive. There's many different elements that go into complete streets. So, you know, it's not necessarily going to look the same in Lexington as it looks in Bowling Green, as it looks in Hazard, as it looks in Pikeville. Some of that is, you know, different community needs, and some of that is purely different land context. So what are the land uses within those communities, as well as what does the land look like? You know, being from Evansville, I didn't really know what a hill was until I started doing work in Eastern Kentucky. And, you know, those are challenges that are different as you, you know, go throughout the state. And so we understand that we're incorporating that flexibility within the manual development. Obviously, there's additional considerations. It's not just insert bike lane here and ta-da, we have a complete street. We have to think about things like speed management, whether that's active speed management or passive speed management, encouraging people to drive slower, access management to mitigate conflicts, as well as considering things like maintenance and longevity of our system, as well as work zone accommodations. You know, something that's not always addressed really well. And so we're looking at other states who have done really robust incorporation of bicyclists, pedestrians, transit riders through work zones as well. Complete streets are not one size fits all. I feel like he keeps saying the same thing, and that it really is true here and everywhere, is that it's not going to look the same everywhere. It's not a design prescription. And some concern that we hear from some communities is that it's a demand for an immediate change in their community. And that's not what it is. It truly is an evolution of our transportation network over time. And we understand that there's other initiatives that need to be addressed. As Keith said, we're updating the statewide policy at the same time, but we're also setting the stage and developing a model for local communities to develop their own policies as well. So when we started working with KYTC, we said, well, let's start from a starting point. Let's see what other folks have done and go from there. We want to build upon the successes that they've seen in other states, but we also want this document to be authentically Kentucky. So what we did is we started with the TDOT multimodal scoping manual, and we said, okay, well, this is great. This is written for engineers. What we really wanted was a planning and design and implementation document that is easy to understand and full of visual guidance, so that our communities can pick this up and be a non-practitioner in the transportation industry and understand the goals of the document and how to implement it in their communities, so they can become advocates for us for complete streets within their own communities. So, you know, the TDOT manual, it's very text heavy. There's not much visual guidance. And so, you know, we want to make sure that it's not just the engineering standards document, that it is an approachable and consumable document. So Mikhail must love August deadlines because we also have an August deadline. We are in the weeds of developing chapters for the manual right now. So we started with a table of contents to kind of set up our roadmap for where we want to go. That's been established. And, we're going to be reviewing draft chapters leading up to an August submittal of that final complete streets manual title to be determined. That's still being worked through. But in anticipation of having that partnering conference presentation, we're also going to have training sessions. And so training sessions are going to cover each of the shift regions as well as central office. And we're opening up those training sessions to NPOs and ads and transportation agencies and others who would like to attend. So we can make sure everybody is has the opportunity to become familiar with the document and be able to use it in their communities. So you can see up here, I have Keith and my contact information. I know that was complete streets by fire hose method. Again, trying to get folks out of here at a reasonable time. So I'd love to either take questions now, or if we want to go ahead and hustle on to the next one, here's our contact information if you have any questions following the presentation. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Keith and Katie.
Oh, yes. Thank you, Keith.
Yeah,
I'm so sorry. We're having a stakeholder meeting on May 4th, and it's going to be virtual, so there's no excuse not to come. You can wear your yoga pants and enjoy it from there. Keith would be the contact information, or you can reach out to me as well, and I'll make sure that you get added to the list. We're encouraging everybody to come. We'd love to hear some input on the manual. Tell us about your favorite complete streets across Kentucky, as well as what other states that are doing that are successful that we can build upon as well. So that's May 4th.
May 4th. Okay. Yeah. Thank you guys. You guys back on time a little bit more. Appreciate you.
Hustling.
Yeah, hustling. Good job. Has anybody got any questions for Gresham Smith or KYTC on the complete streets? This is their contact info, and I'll have this presentation on the website if that's okay. All right. Yeah. Thanks, guys. I don't see any questions. So good job. Okay. The next speaker is Scott Thompson out of the Lexington MPO. Scott's the Lexington Bike Ped coordinator. He's got a Bachelor of Science in Landscape Architecture from UK, and League Certified Instructor, League of American Bicyclists. He came to Lexington in '97 to pursue his degree. And since graduating in 2001, he's been a designer, project manager, resident inspector for several projects, residential site park, design and master plan, storm wastewater management, trails, roads, all kinds of stuff. And he's always had an interest in public health and how the built environment is directly tied to daily physical activity. He's currently at the Lexington MPO. His current work involves working to increase bike and ped transportation system access, developing safe, high quality interconnected facilities for biking and walking, and promoting the increase of their use. So let's see, Scott, are you on here?
I am. I just need to be able to, let's see if I can share my screen.
Okay.
And it looks like I can.
Okay, looks like it's starting. Yeah, there you go.
Now, do you all see the presentation format, I hope?
Not the presentation yet, but you can go up there and click one of those buttons.
Let's see.
Beginning or wherever. There you go.
All right. Okay, great. Yeah, so I was going to talk a little bit about the development of bicycle infrastructure in Lexington, and really how, planning studies, design guidance, and standards, which are very critical to that development, and then funding and implementation strategies have kind of influenced the development of the bicycle network that we have in Lexington and what we have planned in Lexington. We do also do bicycle and pedestrian planning in Jessamine County. Things are moving in the right direction there as well. And again, I think one thing that's important to remember about all of this is that, this really is about coordination. Our federal partners, our state partners, we work a lot with District 7 to implement these things, because as you all know, we have local roads, we have state roads, and we have federal highway designations throughout our county. And without that coordination and the development of relationships and partnerships over time, none of this would be possible. So just keep that in mind as I kind of go through these things. So Lexington started kind of planning for bikes as far back as 1979. We had a Citizens Bikeway Advisory Committee. And that committee met monthly for several years and were responsible for developing our first bicycle facilities plan for Lexington in 1982. At that time, we had 0 miles of bicycle facilities, but there was a vision for what biking could be in Lexington. And what I find interesting about this plan is that the language, I'm going to read just a little bit of the language from it. And this was, keep in mind, this was 1982. And so the idea of this plan was to develop a comprehensive, balanced, and integrated bicycle facility system that encourages and expands bicycle usage and serves the bicycling needs of Lexington, Fayette County in an efficient and aesthetic manner. And so that sounds like it's right out of our 2018 bicycle plan, right? These ideas that we sometimes feel are just new and exciting are really we've already come up with those. Some of the objectives are again very similar: improve bicyclist accessibility to residential housing, employment, shopping, educational and recreational opportunities, historical and other public areas. Adequately serve all types of bicycle movements. They talk about inter-community, inter-neighborhood, and intra-neighborhood. Create integrated, planned, and existing bicycle facilities into a continuous system, something that we're still working on today, but hope to get there soon. Remove physical barriers to bicycle travel, encourage the multiple use of public right-of-ways for bicycle facilities. So again, all of these things that we're still talking about today, and we've come a long ways, but I just, when I saw this, I thought, man, we could have just really copied and pasted some of this from the original plan as we update our plans moving forwards. So after that plan was developed, we didn't really do much for the next 20 years. But as a result of that plan, we did end up putting in what was our first bicycle infrastructure, which is our what we call the Belafonte bike route, which connects downtown to one of our suburban parks. Again, it's an on-road route that meanders through neighborhood streets, connecting out to some green space. So like I said, we didn't do a whole lot of planning between bicycle planning or bicycle facilities construction in that 20 years, but we did increase our bicycle network to 3.7 miles of infrastructure over that 20-year period. So we had a few areas where we had some bike lanes added. We did get some farm roads that were turned into bike trails as a part of some residential development. And so that basically equaled that 3.7 miles of bicycle facilities. And again, the result of a plan, but really what wasn't there at the time was really good design guidance and standards, and then really good funding opportunities. It wasn't really until 1991 with ICE-T that we started seeing more dedicated funding for standalone bicycle and pedestrian projects. And so while that happened in this 20-year period, it took a lot of time for folks to figure out how to implement those types of projects. And that was kind of the beginning of that stuff. But what we did in 2002 was we developed a Greenways master plan. And this plan had, it was the first plan that had recommendations for a greenway trail system that included on and off-road connections to our greenways and green space. And it also recommended the creation of a greenway coordinator position, which later led to our bicycle and pedestrian coordinator. And then it also talked a lot about implementing a connected trail system. And so, while the first plan mentioned connectivity, this actually used maps and showed routes and showed what that system could look like and how it could connect Lexington. And I think that was critical because that really started to change how we did things in Lexington. From a planning level and an engineering level, making our zoning and subdivision regulations more accommodating to get these things developed as a part of new development, infill and redevelopment, as well as our engineering and capital improvement projects in our community. And again, continuing to talk with our partners at D7 as road projects and things came in as well. But again, still really not a whole lot has happened at this point as it related to bicycle infrastructure. So a couple of things that we mark along the way to our development of our 2008 bicycle and pedestrian master plan is we did look at some commute to work data that is provided by the American Community Survey, and Lexington was listed at 0.6% commute to work in 2005, and then of course in 2008 we developed our first bicycle and pedestrian master plan, and in that 6 years we added roughly 23 miles of bicycle facilities. But again, if you can see that graphic, a lot of that is still that spaghetti network, not a lot of connectivity. And so that means that, it's very difficult to get from point A to point B. So you don't really expect to see big increases in bicycle usage without having some connectivity in your system. The other things that happened during that time period is we did have a bicycle and pedestrian coordinator started in the local government and then move into the MPO, and she developed Kinsey Gleason working with a lot of other folks, including Keith and some other planners here in Lexington, developed the first bicycle and pedestrian master plan, and that really built upon that Greenways master plan. And started looking at different infrastructure and funding opportunities, but still design guidance around bicycle facilities was very limited. Bike lanes really and shared use trails were what we were talking about at the time, and we still weren't really adequately dealing with intersections, right? We were still saying that bike lanes generally would either terminate prior to the intersection and force people to negotiate space with motor vehicles as they move through that intersection, which can be very intimidating for folks that aren't used to riding a bike in those situations. So, in order to really get those increases in usage, you've got to have that connectivity and you've got to have that system-wide safety that allow people to feel comfortable riding their bikes through those intersections. We did see several more transportation bills come through in that time period as well, which helped increase that funding. And we started to get better at how we access that. We were able to educate our public officials on the value of bringing those federal dollars back to our community at a low cost. And so again, the culture begins to shift to help implement a lot of these projects. We looked at the bike to work data again. We had gone up in 2010, and then we'd gone back down in 2016. And again, the relevancy of the ACS data is that is the commute to work mode by bike all the time is the question. And so it's a difficult measure, and we also know that the commute is 1 in 5 trips, right? And so we were seeing increases in people riding bikes, but we still use that as a measure. And so we're thinking to ourselves, how why, right? Why are we not getting better at getting people to commute on bicycles? And some really interesting things happened between the 2008 plan and our 2018 plan. The momentum that was kind of generated from that 2008 plan, how we were better at really having projects at least through final design ready to go, so that when different infrastructure bills are passed and there's this dedicated funding or a TAP cycle opens or CMAQ cycle opens, having projects designed really helped us move them quickly, and so that really helped us capitalize on those dollars and really started getting some projects in place. We also saw our Legacy Trail and our Brighton Rail Trail get constructed in those 2 time periods, and so larger, really connected trails that have helped people get out and use them and start to wonder why they're not in other parts of our community. So there was this real momentum that started to come along between that 2008 and 2018 plan. We also saw design guidance really changing, bike boxes, better separation through intersections, the Dutch lefts, things that are really important to making people feel safe at the intersection. If you give up at the intersection, the network just doesn't work well. And so a lot of things had changed in that 10-year period. As a local, some local things that happened for us, we really started looking at integrating bike lanes into our repaving, and District 7 started doing that as well. And so that really helped to increase our infrastructure in that 10-year period. And you can see we went from 27 miles of bicycle facilities to a little over 100 miles of bicycle facilities. And again, more connectivity, better infrastructure. While we still have a lot of intersections that are substandard, we have a lot more that aren't. And so again, and we're working to, to continue to figure that out. Space is a commodity at intersections, especially as it relates to vehicular capacity. And so sometimes you've got to make decisions as to what is most important. Is it safety or is it capacity? And so there has to be that balance to really improve that safety to get people biking more and give them the safe infrastructure that they need. So we, like I said, we saw a whole lot of real great infrastructure come in that 10-year period. And I think a lot of that was just the culmination of a culture shift, better design guidance and standards, really following our studies and plans that have been developed to that time, and then really understanding how we implement projects, our funding strategies, using local dollars to pay for the design of projects in anticipation that there will be federal funding available at some point to move those projects into right-of-way utilities and construction, and being ready to go so that we can shorten those timelines and spend that money quickly and get that infrastructure built. And then increasing your capacity to do so. We need engineers to manage these projects. And so that was another piece that really helped with that development as well. And it all is a part of that culture shift and that larger change that we've seen over time within our local government, and also at District 7, some great leadership there as well, currently and in the past. So moving forwards, we currently have about 127 miles of bicycle projects that are built or in some level of funding in 2022. You can see that connectivity is really starting to come into play, to start connecting people to jobs, goods and services, things of that nature. But again, without really focusing on our intersections, the on-road facilities become limited to certain sects of people that will actually use those routes. And I'll talk about who that is on my next slide. But one thing I do want to point out is the map that you're looking at, the graphic that you see there, does not include what we call our preferred routes or our bicycle connections. And those really are neighborhood streets that are low volume and low speed, that allow folks to connect between some of the existing infrastructure where you just don't need bike facilities, right? If you've got speeds that are 25 and below, and you've got ample right of way or ample roadway width and very low volumes, streets serve bikes well with no facility designation.
Thanks, Scott. Hold on just a minute.
Yeah, sure.
We've got about 5 more minutes. We've got one more presentation. Do you have how many more slides? How many more slides do you have, sir?
I'm going to roll through this quick. I'll be done in 2 minutes.
2 minutes. Okay. Yes.
All right.
How's the audience feel? Are you guys willing to stay maybe 10 more minutes or something to listen to the last one? Okay. So just do the best you can. If you got to leave at 12, I understand. But we'll let Scott finish here, and then if we run past about 10, 15 minutes, I apologize, but we have a lot of great information today. So yeah, go ahead, Scott.
Okay, sure. So these bicycle connections, when we add those into the network, you can see that really increases the connectivity, which is important. But moving on, when we talk about who will ride where, our current system really is really designed for that highly confident group. Now, while we have 30 or 40 miles of facilities that are in that interested but concerned, that 51 to 50%, 56% of people, with a low stress tolerance, we'd like to see our entire network there, and we think we can get there. And the way that you get there with the on-road facilities is really addressing your intersections. So both of these slides are from the FHWA Bikeway Selection Guide. If you're not familiar with that document, it's a great document. It's a great planning document. It's also a great kind of design document. But it talks about these different intersection types where you've got this high level exposure, which is what we have a lot of. Then there's that high to medium exposure level where you create separated bike lanes within those mixing zones. And then, obviously, roundabouts really improve that safety. And then finally, that last example of that low exposure is that Dutch left. So, crossing the intersection, waiting, and then moving with traffic instead of crossing across traffic. So again, just some implementation strategies that we think moving forwards will help us increase access to our bicycle network and increase safety on our streets. So that's all I had today. And I hope that was informative. Thanks.
Yeah, very good. Very good. Thanks for taking the time today. Does anybody have any questions for Scott on the Lexington MPO? I like the timeline there, Scott. Good job presenting all that. Hey, we got one more question. Yeah, what do you got?
Does Lexington know for their 127, 128 miles, how much has been spent to construct that? What's been the total cost?
So Jason Blackburn's asking, what was the total cost spent on the Lexington bike ped plan over how many years?
Yeah, just since its inception.
Since its inception. He's our shift guy with all the investment stuff. Do you know about how much money you guys have spent on the bike ped plan? On the bike ped process?
You mean on the plans themselves, or are you talking about all that infrastructure? I can tell you that over the last decade, we've spent or are spending around $53 million on bike and pedestrian projects. And again, keep in mind that that is not for the facilities themselves. Obviously, that includes a lot of public infrastructure as well, right? Storm drainage, sanitary sewer stuff, all the things associated with big, heavy lifts. And I don't know off the top of my head what that looks like over the entire time, but I will figure that out and add that to this because I think that's an important piece.
And that was Jason Blackburn, in case you, if you know Jason or not. Okay, thanks, guys. And let's see, the last presentation. Thank you guys for being patient with me here. And it's about noon time, so you guys that had a hard deadline for noon, go ahead and take your lunch. I'm recording this, obviously, but I'll go ahead and read the bios for the next speakers and give them about 10, 15 minutes, however long the overachievers can stay. All right, thanks. Let's see. Okay, Jessica Blankenship. Woo, she got shout out from the Bluegrass, all the ads. She's a Berea College graduate, and she's been a regional transportation planner for the Cumberland Valley Area Development District for over 10 years. Her diverse background includes experience in planning, tourism, event planning, and a love of music. She serves in the Bike Walk Kentucky Board of Directors, as well as RTEC Board of Directors, and a proud Kentucky Colonel. When she isn't advocating for improvements in transportation, you can find her at a concert or music festival or interviewing musicians for her website, Kentucky Country Music. So that's interesting. And Troy Hearn, let me go ahead and read his too. Is a former KYTC walk bike program coordinator, now the administrator for the active living program within the state physical activity and nutrition program in the Kentucky State Department for Public Health. Not to mention numerous other organizations that he's been involved with to advocate and advance walk bike programs and promotion in Kentucky. So guys, thanks. Like I say, thanks again for your patience, and I can see your presentation. Let me get the
Yes.
speaker.
Troy.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
All right, I'll tell you what, when I started with the Area Development District 10 years ago, I never thought in the world that I'd be doing anything with bike ped planning. I do not ride a bicycle. I injured my knee and had 2 surgeries, so I don't ride a bicycle, but we all walk. We all walked in here, didn't we? So we're all users. And over the years, I've been working with Troy and working with Transportation Cabinet of doing several master plans. And with the City of Corbin, I ended up doing their bicycle and pedestrian master plan. Some of the key players, got them listed there: City of Corbin, their Main Street program, the school system, tourism, the ad, Transportation Cabinet, as well as the health department. Some of the steps in planning that we ended up doing: we had our initial team meeting. We did a community survey through Google Forms, and I'll have this available as well on the ad website, as well as KYTC. In the meantime, while the community survey was being developed and getting answers, I was researching the crash data as well as current assets. All the area development districts, we have mapped all the sidewalks, crosswalks, bike lanes, pedestrian bridges, anything and everything that deals with bike ped, we have got it on in our files.
After we got all that data, we had a team meeting with the survey results and we come up with a project list. With that project list, we ended up doing a walkability and bikeability audit. I ended up writing the plan and then we went back and forth with the team with edits, also worked with Troy of fine tuning that plan. And you can work with Keith as well on this. And then it was presented at the city council meeting and we ended up doing this all during COVID too, which was unique. And they ended up adopting the plan, then we sent it to KYTC. One of the things, all of these pictures except the two that are on the far left, that you see there is when you're doing your bicycle and pedestrian planning is who is using your bicycle and pedestrian facilities. That very first picture on the top, we talked about the e-scooters. I absolutely hate them. Personal story, I was in Nashville, go down there frequently and there was a whole pile of those e-scooters and I'm walking. My choices were either to walk over those, move them out of my way, or go out in the street, a busy street. Now you can only imagine if you're in a wheelchair, you have no option except turn around and go around. If you do notice the top center picture and the one on the right, that is two different individuals in motorized wheelchairs. Yes, that one is in the middle of the road. There is no sidewalk facilities and that's during winter time as well. The one on the right is on Master Street and then the two bottom of the walkers and the bicyclists, that is on Master Street as well. Through the bicycle and pedestrian plan, we ended up developing a project and that's the Master Street project. This is just an aerial photo. The project area is just a little over half a mile. Average daily traffic count is over 11,000 cars. And there's also a school, it's mixed development, shopping, grocery, there's pharmacies, there's a senior living community there, as well as banking. There's low income and moderate income housing in that area. So it's a land of opportunity. The biggest disadvantage is that there's a lack of lighting and sidewalks through that area. Now, once you go from Standard Avenue towards the Main Street area, there is sidewalks and there is proper lighting. Why they decided to stop at Standard Avenue, I have no idea. This is just a street view, kind of what it looks like through Google Earth, through Google Maps, kind of you'll see where the sidewalk ends. And that bottom right corner is where the senior living community is as well. So it's a very wide street. Some crash data for the last 10 years, there was 3 deaths. And you'll notice that 2 of those deaths were 2017 and 2019. And just over a month, we ended up having 2 crashes with a bicyclist and pedestrian with a vehicle. And if you notice all the weather conditions and road conditions, it was clear and dry, but it was later in the afternoon. And this started a discussion with the mayor. And so what we ended up doing, I met with the mayor, we met with Secretary Jim Gray, Senator Robert Stivers, Representative Huff, Mike Calebs, who is Chief District Engineer at the time. We come up here to Frankfurt. This was pre-COVID. This was back in early 2020. The Highway District Office ended up providing the cost estimate and design work. City of Corbin ended up applying for discretionary funding. Before Bashir came into office, as everybody knows, when Governor Bevin was in office, it was almost like Oprah, everybody got a street and the sidewalk and blacktop. And this was awarded, but it kind of got lost. And so we had to go back and apply for that funding for 100% emergency. The reason for that 100% emergency, we had that death and we had multiple deaths. The cost estimate was $290,000. Bashir ended up announcing it last June for approval. And as you can see, we had our big fancy check presentation. And right now the city of Corbin is working on that and be reimbursed by the state. The results of our bike ped plan besides Master Street, they've completed with sidewalk trip hazard repair mapping. That was a big part of it. We got funded for the Master Street project. Gordon Hill sidewalk project was completely funded. I wish I had before and after pictures because Gordon Hill had steps. So it was totally not ADA compliant by no means. Now it is ADA compliant and it is near a low income housing facility. We also ended up just completing a multi-use path feasibility study. We've installed crosswalk signage and lights. And of course, bike racks are being constructed by the local high school students. NATO just completed a case study featuring it. And the health department ends up doing bike walk events as well. The remaining project list, I've got those listed. I won't go through all those. But right now we're continuing to do sidewalk repairs as well as proper signage. And we're working on multi-use paths. So that's our next goal is to get a couple multi-use paths. Some lessons learned. Ironically, on the FHWA presentation earlier, there was a picture of someone in a motorized wheelchair with brick pavers, and that's the number one thing I absolutely hate. And I learned that because, and I'll tell you who in a second, but I always say avoid big brick pavers for sidewalks and crosswalks because they are trip hazards. You walk out the KYTC right here and it's unsettled and everything. Involve your youth in identifying projects as well as solutions. Use a GoPro camera. Utilize wonderful resources such as Troy, Keith, Bike Walk Kentucky, etc. Bike rental program, have those at your rec center as well as the library. And educate your public about electric scooter usage as well. The reason why I'm always pushing for ADA compliance, it can be a costly mistake in your communities. Atlanta's got sued. Los Angeles is paying $1.3 billion, not million, $1 billion over 30 years to bring their sidewalks to ADA compliance. Portland ended up, they've got $113 million. So prevent your communities, whether it's Lexington, Louisville, or City of Harlan, being sued because they're not ADA compliant. I mentioned about the wheelchairs and stuff. This is Miss Casey Schaefer, and she's probably the number one person that inspired me to have a better community to live, play, and work. She was Miss Wheelchair Kentucky. She came and spoke at our area development board meeting, and is, you know, just different little things, including having the sidewalk ramps no more than an inch because she can flip out of them. Unfortunately, Casey did pass away about 3 years ago, but we keep our legacy living on. There's several other Miss Wheelchair Kentucky contestants that I've made contact with over the years. So while you're doing your planning efforts, highly encourage you to get somebody that is disabled in your community that is an advocate for that. Some valuable resources, those links, they'll be on the KYTC website. And Troy, I just had you as bicycling guru. So, you know, and walking guru. And then that's my contact info. So
Yeah, thanks,
that's all I
Jessica.
have.
Let's see, does anybody have any questions for
Oh,
Jessica?
Jason.
Jason's got a question. Jason Blackburn's got a question.
So, Rick's been put out there, you know, back to work thing, 100%. What is for, like, and I always say just non-recreational? You know, do you have an actual number, not a guess?
Mhm.
We don't want to play guesses. Well, if we do this, how many people are actually biking, walking for non-recreational purposes?
He's asking how many people are actually walking and biking for non-recreational purposes.
Yeah.
Everybody in town walks at some point during the day to get to where they're going, Jason.
That doesn't answer my question. How many?
Everybody that can walk.
Disagree. Seriously, do you not have the numbers?
Yes, when we did the survey, that was one of the question is, do you walk for recreation? Do you walk for a purpose, whether it's to work, school, you know, what's your destinations as well as bicycling, or are you disabled? And so we were kind of shocked because you do have a high school, middle school, and elementary school within town there. And there was at least over, I think it's like 55% of people were walking. But there was I remember that there was like 30 to 40% that they were afraid to have their child or grandchild or to be walking because of conditions, whether it was malicious dogs or they just didn't feel safe one way or the other, or there was no infrastructure there. So
5% of how many respondents?
there was, for that survey, there was over 300 respondents of the survey.
170 people?
Yeah. Yeah. And we do, and I forgot to mention too, Corbin does have a couple of bicycle lanes as well. And we're in the process of connecting the two areas with the bicycle lanes. And then the feasibility study that we did for the multi-use path, it's going to be connecting the middle school to the library to downtown. And that's actually, we're going to be applying for grant funds. We just completed that study like not even a month ago. So for that.
Cool. Yeah, thank you guys. Okay, let's see, Troy, you get whatever, 5-10 minutes. We'll see what you can do.
Well, good news. I'm not even going to open my presentation.
You want me to open it for you?
Nope, no, we're good. My name's Troy Hearn. Now I'm ahead with the state public health department, another cabinet in our state that is working on bike walk projects. Currently, we have 27 counties that I'm working with. To date, We have about 15 communities that have completed a bike walk master plan. The funding that I have comes from the Center for Disease Control and Prevention. I work with the Prevention Quality Improvement Program, State Physical Activity and Nutrition Program. I'm the active living coordinator on that. My program has about $8.5 million that we spend on all of our initiatives. My portion of it is about $1.4 million over a 5-year period. We are in year 4 of our 5-year funding. The way our funding was allocated for this 5-year cycle, the CDC selected counties for us. They listed the poorest, least healthy counties in our state. Kentucky has some of the most deplorable health conditions in the country. Kentuckians, about 34% of all Kentuckians are deemed disabled in some way, shape, or form. That's a little bit higher percentage nationwide. On the nation, about 27% of our population is deemed to be disabled in some way, shape, or form. Some of the alarming statistics from a health perspective, by the year 2030, the CDC says that more of our population will be over the age of 65 than 18 and below. I know in the health services industry, they call this the Great Gray Wave. So in about 8 years or so, we're going to see a dynamic shift in our population age ranges. So the work that I'm doing is primarily from a health equity point of view. We wanted to work with communities that don't have the funding or the wherewithal to develop something like a bike walk master plan on their own. Some of them are very, very similar. When you're working with Hayden, Kentucky, and Hindman, Kentucky, you only really have to look at 3 or 4 streets that have sidewalks for some kind of improvements. We're working with communities that get like $8,000 a year in road aid funds. To quote from one of the mayors, he said that's enough to fix about 3 or 4 potholes a year. So it can be extremely challenging working with these communities of this size. But the best place to start is with the plan. The best time to make a plan was 40 years ago. The second best time to make a plan is today, and that's what we're doing. So today we have about 15 communities that have completed the bike walk plans. We have another 10 or 11 communities. We're doing this great work with the area development district offices, awesome consultant firms like Gresham Smith. We still work a lot with KYTC. We have an MOU between my state agency and the KYTC bike bid program. Work a lot with Keith Lovin. He does a great job of keeping me calm during a lot of our meetings and video presentations. Work a lot with Bernadette. Thank you, Bernadette. Bernadette is our FHWA bike walk contact now. Thank you for that, Darren. And Darren Grunfeld was the former person. I wish him well in his retirement. And that's it. If you guys need to contact me for anything, contact me troy.hearn@ky.gov. And I hope I wrapped up quick.
Yeah, thanks, Troy. And your presentation, you okay if I put that on the website? Okay. If you guys got any questions for Troy, he just gave his email.
You have a question for me?
Jason, you got any more questions?
About 15 years ago, Jason Blackburn was quoted as saying, "You're never going to see any of that bike walk stuff in my district." Guess what?
All right.
Yes, Bernadette. An announcement. For the cash?
ASHTO. Bernadette's asking about if he had an announcement for ASHTO.
I don't know, do I? My notes went out the window when I saw my time dwindling. Oh, yes. My program has leftover funding, and we're going to purchase bike ped design manuals. Those are separate design manuals, ASHTO design manuals, for all of the area development district offices and all of the planning programs with all of the district offices. Because one of the things that I saw last year when helping FHWA do some inspections were things like 4-inch total thicknesses of shared use path when the ASHTO minimum is 6 inches. And when I asked the folks, about those standards, they were like, well, we don't even own that manual. So we are going to purchase ASHTO ped design guides and ASHTO bike design guides for all of the district offices and all of the ad office transportation planners as well.
And Saeed's asking, what about MPOs?
The MPOs have their own funding program and they are federally required to accommodate bike and walk in all modes. So they should already own these manuals.
So we'll see what we can do there. Thank you. Thank you, Troy. Good job. Excellent presentation. And that wraps up the meeting, guys. Thanks. Sincere thank you to the speakers and the audience, especially live audience for making the trip out. I appreciate you guys. It's good to see faces again after this COVID stuff. This is the first in-person one of these we've had, probably 2 years now. So the only other thing on the agenda, there's some breakout sessions for MPOs at 1, HTOs at 1:30. And then announcements, Berry House officially retired, I guess, from us. So, and then Brad Bottoms, Chief District Engineer, Special Duty in District 4, Steve Hall, Engineering Support Branch Manager, retired in District 4, FHWA Moore Diop, and Ads Ian Cole is our new Lake Cumberland Ad Transportation Planner. And yes, all you've been here today. So thank you guys, and I'll stick around for a few more minutes. You're online and in person. If there's any other questions come up, but keep a lookout for the presentations to be on our website. And have you a good rest of the day.
Always nice pictures, so. Thank you very much.